Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating and absolutely crucial topic for anyone working in fleet safety or operations. Look, in trucking, we generate a literal mountain of paperwork, right? Honestly, enough to fill a warehouse. But here's the catch. Perfectly clean paperwork can actually hide massive operational risks. You might think a neatly organized filing cabinet means you've got a safe fleet. But a clean file might just mean you're really good at hiding the real story. Okay, let's dive into this. You know that comforting image of an organized carrier? This is the absolute holy grail for compliance managers. Complete driver qualification files. Daily vehicle inspection reports, the DVIRs, all clean and filed. Saved repair invoices, and ELD records you can actually access without needing an IT degree to figure them out. And hey, signed policies everywhere. We totally understand that sheer relief. When everything is audit ready, it just calms the room, doesn't it? It makes the owner feel better, and it makes the safety department feel prepared. But this brings us to what I like to call the trap. As the saying goes, sometimes the document is exactly where the questions start. You see, a neat file can make everyone believe a question has been fully answered simply because a piece of paper exists. It lulls you into this false sense of confidence, thinking the operation is way cleaner than it actually is out on the road. Section 1. The Clean File Trap. It's all about proving versus actually controlling.
A clean file may only prove that documents were collected, not that anyone actually wrestled with the risk. People often see a signature and a date on a piece of paper and think, great, problem solved. But records are not just proof of collection. They should show what the company saw, what it understood, what it ignored, and what it allowed to keep happening. If you just check the box that the file exists, you completely miss the actual story happening out in your fleet. Moving on to Section 2. When records hide the truth. Let's look at how isolated records can completely fail us.
First up, let's look at the driver qualification, or DQ file. On one hand, you've got a perfectly complete, signed and dated file. Excellent. But what's the reality? What did that file actually show before the driver was hired? Were recent MVR problems just ignored? Did a previous employer raise serious concerns that were glossed over? Just because the paperwork is complete doesn't mean anyone actually evaluated those warning signs. Sometimes everybody just closes the folder because a truck desperately needs a seat filled, right?
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this applies to maintenance. You have a closed repair order. It's thick, it looks highly official, and it definitely proves money was spent. But does it prove the issue was actually fixed? What if a driver writes up a defect, the truck moves anyway, and later that same piece of equipment gets a roadside violation for the exact same issue? The closed invoice might just prove that you spent money, not that the repeat equipment defect was corrected before demanding customer forced to dispatch.
Here's our third example, and man, this is a massive red flag. Clean DVIRs versus dirty roadside inspections. Imagine seeing 0 defects on all your driver reports. Everything looks completely fine. But then, inspector after inspector constantly finds brake, tire, or securement issues that the drivers supposedly never saw. When drivers report no defects, but inspectors find them all the time, that isn't just a paperwork error. It points to a toxic reporting culture, a lack of real inspection training, or severe dispatch pressure where drivers are literally terrified a defect is going to cost them a load. Finally, let's talk about ELDs and training records. A driver might sign a training sheet and the ELD records might be perfectly stored away. But magic ink on a signed training sheet means absolutely nothing if the exact same hours of service pressure, unsafe planning, and bad driver behavior continue the very next day. A manager can understand the written rule, sign off on all the training, and still completely overrule it when a load is hot and the customer is raising Cain.
Which leads us to Section 3, comparing across the operation to find the actual truth.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we actually find that truth. DVIRs look fine until you compare them to roadside inspections. Repair orders look absolutely great until you compare them to repeat defects and actual vehicle movement. ELD records, they're just data storage until you compare them against appointment times and dispatch expectations. And coaching notes mean nothing unless you compare them against later driver behavior. When you force these isolated records to sit beside one another and talk, the true story of your operation immediately shows up.
This brings us to Section 4. When problems become accepted. This is the critical warning sign. That crucial warning sign is repetition. Repetition is when a recurring problem is no longer an accident, but a fully operationally accepted practice. Look, we all know trucking is messy and imperfect. One missed document, one bad dispatch, one maintenance violation, that might just be a really bad day.
But when the same missed document, the same vehicle defect, or the same hours of service pressure happens repeatedly after documentation or coaching, it's not an accident anymore. The company hasn't just seen the risk, they've simply gotten used to it. They have accepted it as business as usual.
Section 5. Administration versus true authority.
So the crucial point is this distinction between administrative control and operational authority. You might have an excellent safety employee who keeps perfect records. The binders are beautifully organized, the folders are current, and they save the company from audit trouble for sure. That is administrative control. But do they have operational authority? Can that safety manager actually hold equipment or stop a bad dispatch? Can they require a repair? If they can't, your perfectly clean file only proves someone documented problems they literally didn't have the power to fix.
And that brings us to our final takeaway, Section 6, the tomorrow test.
I want you to ask yourself this right now. Could the exact same issue happen again tomorrow? Could the same truck go back out with the same defect? Could the same driver repeat the same unsafe behavior? Could the same dispatcher create the exact same pressure? If your answer is yes, it doesn't matter how neat your folders are. The file may be closed, but the problem is definitely not. We know real-world trucking is tough. Equipment breaks, shops get backed up, and customers create immense pressure. A strong file doesn't have to show perfection, but good records must show that the company actually took action. They should show awareness, judgment, authority, action, and escalation. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought as you head into work tomorrow. When you look at your own neatly organized files, what is your paperwork quietly pointing at? Are your records just collecting dust, or are they actually telling the whole truth about your operation? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Start making your files talk to each other, and I'll catch you next time.